Hello, hi, hope you're doing alright. Today I am bringing you a killer perk tier list. Going to be ranking all of the perks in the game for killer. I'm going to try to be going through this fairly quickly as I don't want this video to be too long. Inevitably it's going to be pretty long as there's a lot of perks in the game, but if I kind of brush through some perks, don't talk about them a whole lot, understand that it's for the sake of time, and you're more than welcome to ask me any questions in the comment section if you want any more details about why I rank a perk a certain way. The tier list ranking is pretty simple. S tier is top tier, A is high, B is above average, C is average, D is below average, E is low tier, and F is bottom tier. In my opinion, anything average or above is in a pretty good spot, and it's might be worth your time running. Anything in below average or below are perks that need buffs, reworks, or some extra care. Obviously, whatever I say in this list, run whatever perk you like. You can win any game of Dead by Daylight with any perk in the entire game, so don't take this to heart. This is just maybe some guidance if you're newer to the game, or if you're just interested in seeing how I rank things and how I look at things, especially now with some of the better, more meta regression perks getting nerfed and some of those big perk changes that came out recently. Remember to like the video and all that stuff if you enjoy it. Also, apologies if there's some background noise. There's a fan going. It is getting to that time of year where it gets a little hotter, so you might start hearing some background noise in my videos with fans and air conditioning and all that nonsense. Anyways, let's just get right into it. First perk on our list is Agitation. Agitation, I'm actually going to put into high tier. Agi is very, very good. It's a perk that you often need to complement with something else, such as a Scourge Hook perk. However, being able to save time through just moving faster to get the hooks faster is really, really good. It saves you a lot of time over the course of a match, and it also lets you play a little bit more aggressively when you're carrying people. It can often get you some free hits that you might not have been able to get. Gets you a lot of free pressure that you might not realize. Nurse's Calling. Nurse's Calling is pretty good. I would say it is also high tier, especially now with the recent healing nerfs. People that are self-healing are going to more often come up on Nurse's Calling because the self-healing time with a medkit takes quite a bit longer. There's the reason. Barbecue and Chili. I think Barbecue and Chili is just above average. The R rating on it is very nice, but oftentimes it can feel kind of lackluster if you aren't playing a higher mobility killer. There's another perk, which we'll talk about a little bit later, that I think is just better than Barbecue and Chili and kind of has a similar effect, but is better for lower mobility killers as well. But once again, Barbecue and Chili most effective on high mobility killers like Blight, Nurse, Spirit, anyone else of that nature. But regardless, still good rotation info. Next is Beast of Prey. Beast of Prey is terrible. Don't run Beast of Prey. It's just a bad perk. Bitter Murmur is, I would say Bitter Murmur is average. It's okay. Basically reveals survivors' auras when they complete a generator, but only the survivors that are around that generator. It also gives you 10 seconds of aura reading at the end game, which can sometimes be pretty nice if you're pairing it with an end game build. But throughout the game, it'll give you some okay information. It might tell you if survivors are healing after they finish a generator or where they're rotating to. But I think there's better aura reading perks, especially for if you want to keep tabs on survivors or if you want to patrol the map and see where people are rotating to. Next is Bloodhound. I'm going to add another row here, actually. My bad. I'm going to add another row called Special. Bloodhound, I'm going to rank in Special because for a good number of people, this can actually be an accessibility perk. Some people struggle to see blood just because of certain vision impairments, and I've heard that Bloodhound makes it easier to see the blood. It makes it easier to track for them. Basically what it does is it makes blood really, really bright and almost impossible to miss. Outside of that, the actual effectiveness of this perk is kind of once you're better at the game, once you're more experienced, blood can be fairly easy to see even without this perk. But obviously, if it's an accessibility issue and you need the perk to actually see blood, go ahead and run it. That's why I'm putting it in Special, because I don't really feel like I can fairly rank the perk normally. And it would be nice if if there was some sort of option in the future, even beyond just the colorblind settings, to help people see blood if they still struggle to actually see it in game. Especially on maps like Borgo, it can be absolutely impossible to see blood on a map like that. Next we have Blood Warden. Blood Warden I think is average. Blood Warden can be very funny and it can do a lot of big plays for you in the end game. However, it's super duper easy to play around, especially as survivor. Most survivors are just going to be careful and they're not going to open the gate before you hook someone. Optimally, for Blood Warden to really, really be good, you want to actually activate it on someone who's dead on hook, so you can potentially kill that person and then go get another person and kill them, or pop off and maybe start slugging a bunch of people and start chain downing and all that stuff. But oftentimes Blood Warden is just very easy to play around and people don't usually risk opening the gates if someone's about to be hooked. They usually just wait till after the person gets hooked. Next we have Brutal Strength. Brutal Strength is above average. It's actually quite good, especially after the base kicking speed buff that we got many months ago. Probably a couple months ago, like I would say just over half a year ago we got that when the big perk rework came out, that first one. It's going to be pretty good. Can help you maintain pressure and chase, makes it so you don't lose that much distance when you kick a pallet. Can be some really nice stuff. Honestly, sometimes it can be a good quality of life perk, but I think it really helps out a lot of killers that particularly struggle at dealing with really safe pallets, like Clown, for an example, or Doctor. Deerstalker, I'm going to say, is below average. Deerstalker just is a outdated perk. It just kind of comes from a time where there wasn't as much going on in the game, so you'd often see people run this because there just wasn't as many options. All it really does is reveal where survivors are, where they are in the dying state. If you're slugging them on the ground, it'll show you where they are. I think that effect should just be wrapped into a different perk, and Deerstalker should just be reworked entirely. But that's my 2 cents. Honestly, it's just too niche, and there's a lot of other perks that can cover what it does perfectly fine. For example, Barbecue. But if you want to run it in dedicating slugging build, go ahead. It's going to do its job fairly well, but there's just other things out there that can do what it does and also do other things. Next, we have Hex Devour Hope. Devour Hope, I'm going to actually rank an above average. I think Devour Hope is really, really slept on, to be honest. People often see Devour Hope as a high-risk, high-reward perk, but honestly, I see it as a medium-risk, high-reward perk. I almost always, when I run this perk, actually get it to the 3rd stack and at least get the insta-down value out of it and potentially slow the entire game down in my favor, and am able to snowball that into a win. Devour Hope can give you a lot. It's just a lot of times it can feel very shitty if someone spawns right on your Hex Totem and they cleanse it. Obviously, that's the risk part of it, but I oftentimes feel like if you pair this with Undying or any other sort of totem defense perk, that you can actually just, at the very least, get the insta-down value out of it. You're not always going to get that Moray value that you might want, the 5 stacks, but at the very least, you're going to be able to slow the game down to a crawl once you get to the insta-down stage, as people are going to start looking for that totem instead of doing generators. Especially now that booning isn't nearly as popular as it used to be with the recent Circle of Healing nerf. I think survivors in general are just not looking out for totems as much anymore until they actually get the threat of a totem. But that's just my 2 cents. Regardless, we have Distressing next. Distressing is, I'm going to put it in low tier, only because Distressing does have synergy with certain killers, most notably Doctor, and it has synergy in certain builds. However, having a bigger terror radius is very rarely a good thing. It gives survivors early warning of when you're coming. It means you're going to leave earlier. The bonus blood points it gives you can kind of feel nice sometimes, but very rarely does Distressing actually do something useful for yourself. Next we have Dying Light. Dying Light also going into low tier. Dying Light is the epitome of a win more perk. It's a perk that doesn't really do a whole lot for you in those games where you're struggling and you really need something to help you regain pressure and get things back in your favor, but it is going to make it a lot easier to win games that you were already going to win in the first place. Dying Light is just too slow to start. It actually buffs a survivor from the beginning of the game. It doesn't help you in the beginning of the game. And even when you have it fairly ramped up, at that point you usually have a survivor dead, so the slowdown in it is just overkill, so it doesn't really matter. Just not a very good perk in general. Enduring is next. Enduring is going to go into the above average tier. I do think Enduring is pretty damn good, even by itself. It's even better if you synergize it with something like Spirit Fury, but even by itself, it's a very good perk. That reduced stun from pallets can make it much harder for a survivor to play around certain unsafe pallets, where they basically need to get a stun to actually get value out of the palette. This can make it so getting that stun might not even matter. So that's pretty nice. Fire up. I'm going to put fire up in below average. I'm going to be a little nice to fire up because actually I'm quite fond of it. But oftentimes it just feels like it takes too slow. It takes too long for fire up to actually stack up to do something useful for you. It would be nice if maybe it stacked up a little bit faster, because right now it doesn't really feel that good, especially if you don't run it with another perk like Bamboozle or Brutal Strength, another perk that also covers some kind of action speed that it also does itself. So in general, it'd be nicer if fire up ramped up a bit faster, or maybe if it had another effect. It also is the only perk in the game that increases the speed at which you pick up survivors, which can really fuck with people's flashlight timings, which is very hilarious. So keep that in mind if you want to counter flashlights in kind of an unorthodox way. Next, we have Franklin's Demise. Franklin's Demise. I'm going to actually rank Franklin's Demise as below average these days. This perk has kind of had this weird, like, I don't know, like, for a while it was really, really good, then it was just kind of decently good, and now it's just kind of back down to being below average. With the recent medkit nerf, I really don't think it's that justifiable to bring an entire perk slot to deal with medkits. They can only heal a person one time, I think, at like most, maybe two if they're running really, really stacked add-ons. You could do it to deal with flashlights or toolboxes, I guess, but you can play around flashlights fairly easily a lot of the time, and toolboxes definitely justifiable depending on the toolboxes that people are bringing. I don't know, I'm not a big fan of Franklin's, never have been really. I did see the purpose of it when there was a time when like keys were a lot more lethal, and Franklin's was kind of the only counter you had for keys, and I did see the point of it more recently when medkits were far, far more effective. If you pulled into a 4 medkit lobby, it would definitely not be a bad idea to throw Franklin's on. But now, I just think it's kind of below average. Maybe has a niche, and it certainly is good at doing that niche, but really it's just, there are fewer and fewer reasons, I think, to actually run this perk, especially if they keep nerfing items like they are doing. Next, we have Hangman's Trick, which my recent video featured. One of the least used perks in the entire game for Killer. I'm going to put it in low tier. The range at which Hangman's Trick is actually active is just too small, and it can be very awkward to actually get information out of it because you're like having to carry someone and like turn around and look around, and it's just very weird, very awkward perk to get value out of. I'd love to see this get buffed, maybe a range buff, maybe like I said in the video, maybe there's a bit of a duration if the person actually gets their aura red, maybe the aura remains revealed to you for like 5 seconds or something. That'd be quite nice. Be cool to see this perk get a valid buff. I'm gonna take a quick sip of my water real quick because I can feel my voice like straining from how fast I'm trying to get through all this. Next, we have Hex Huntress's Lullaby. Huntress's Lullaby, I think, is below average. The main thing with Huntress's Lullaby is it just takes too long to ramp up. And even at maximum stacks, it can be quite difficult to honestly hit skill checks when they're silent at maximum stacks. But that doesn't stop survivors from oftentimes hitting them, so you might not even get that much value out of the perk, or it might just get cleansed. At the very least, it's wasting someone's time if it does get cleansed instantly, so you got that going for it. But there are better hex perks to run out there over Huntress's Lullaby. Just far too slow. Doesn't really provide a good enough effect for you. Insidious is absolutely garbage. Very dated perk, needs to get updated. Just don't run it. Iron Grasp, I think, is basically just worse agitation. I'm going to put it in this tier right here. Low tier, I keep forgetting what the E tier is because I'm just going so fast. But Iron Grasp is, in my opinion, just worse agitation. You could combine it with agitation if you really, really want to carry people for far distance, but more often than not, that's just overkill unless you're going for like a basement build or something really gimmicky. But there you go. Definitely run agitation over Iron Grasp. Iron Grasp just isn't nearly as good. Next we have Knockout. Knockout is, I'm going to put Knockout into average, only because Knockout is quite decent sometimes. I think slugging is quite powerful, especially now, and Knockout can definitely do some work on certain teams. The problem is it's going to help you against disorganized teams or solo queue players, players that don't really have as much coordination or information available to them. And sometimes those are the teams that you don't really need that much, you don't need that kind of assistance against, you know what I mean? Against, if you're playing against like a Swift or, 2-stack, 3-stack, it's just easy enough to call out where someone is and just counter the perk. But I do think it has some value, definitely. Being able to making it so someone crawls slower at the very least is quite valuable. It might prevent them from getting under a pallet while you slug them, or might prevent them from getting into a part of the map where there's no hooks or something like that. Next we have Lightborn. Fucking Lightborn, man. I'm going to put Lightborn. I'm very tempted to put it in just bottom tier, but I'm going to put Lightborn in a low tier. Just because it does completely counter flashlights, so it does absolutely excel at what it is marketing to do to you, like what it wants to do, which is counter flashlights. It is very, very good at countering flashlights, but just look at a wall. Just more often than not, it's easy enough to counter flashlights. And honestly, more often than not, when survivors try to flashlight you, whether it's at a pallet, whether they're trying to get flashlight saves, you can oftentimes just get easy hits out of that, and I wouldn't worry too much about it. So I wouldn't run Lightborn, but it is very good at countering flashlights, that's for sure. Next we have Make Your Choice. Make Your Choice, I would say, I'd say it's above average. It's quite good, especially on higher mobility killers that are going to use their M1 to down people. Having it so a person is exposed for 60 seconds and you get to know who that person is not a bad thing. It's a decent perk, gets you some momentum, kind of appeals to a certain play style, and it does encourage you not to tunnel, which I do like. I like perks that do that, that reward you for not tunneling and encourage you not tunnel. Next is Monitor and Abuse. It's kind of hard to rank Monitor and Abuse. I'm going to put Monitor and Abuse in above average. I do quite like Monitor and Abuse, and I think on certain killers it can excel really well, but some killers just don't care for it. I do see this perk get used less and less, and I'm not sure why. Nothing has really changed about it, but maybe there's something I'm missing. I still think it's fairly decent perk, especially on certain killers, so I would recommend it. Next we have Monstrous Shrine. Monstrous Shrine is not very good. I would put it in low tier. I think that it's actually been calculated, like numbers wise, it's just really not that worth it to run. At the very least, probably the best thing it does for you is it makes it so all your basement hooks are Scourge hooks, which can be quite nice, especially if you're combining it with other Scourge hooks. But otherwise, just for like the sacrifice speed increase, it doesn't actually like save you that much time, I'm pretty sure. It definitely feels a lot faster when you're on the hook as a survivor, but the effect isn't really that worth it. And also you have to actually get away from the hook to activate it, so there's like time where it's not even active. Not a great perk. I wouldn't run it. Hex, No One Escapes Death. I'm going to put Noed in high tier. Actually, I'm going to put Noed in above average. I'm going to be a little more truthful to myself. I haven't like fully lost to a Noed in a very, very long time. Not since they did that initial nerf to it, where like the aura is actually revealed to you. More often than not, Noed is going to like guarantee you a kill in the end game, and that's about it. Most people nowadays, they see Noed and they leave. It is easier to find it now that the aura is revealed to the survivors once the effect is actually displayed. So I haven't lost like fully, 4-team sacrifice lost to a Noed in a really long time, but it does help you make a comeback in the end game. If you feel like the game is really, really close, and you're playing hard for it, it can help you out in those last few seconds, which can be quite valuable and is probably the most effective perk at doing that, actually, maybe next to like No Way Out. So very good end game perk, that's for sure. But nowadays I don't feel like it often gets you like a lot of downs in the end game, maybe like 1 or 2, but that's about it. Next we have Overcharge. Overcharge, I'm going to say, is average, especially after the nerf. It's still decent, it's okay, but not nearly as good as it once was. Overwhelming Presence. I actually quite like Overwhelming Presence. I think I'm fond of it. I'm going to stand Overwhelming Presence here. Most people would put it down here. I'm going to put it, you know what, here's my hot take. I'm going to put it in average. Why am I going to put it in average? Here's why. what Overwhelming Presence does is if someone's in your terror radius and they're using an item, it increases or decreases the efficiency by that item by double, basically. Most of the time, if someone's running a medkit, they only get like one heal out of the medkit. All you need to do, every medkit does this now. It's like one heal, unless they're running really cracked add-ons. All you need is for them to be in your terror radius for not even a second. Not even a second when they're healing with the medkit. Boom, medkit can't heal them anymore. I think that's very valuable. I think that's honestly pretty good. At the very least, it's average. I think this is an underrated perk. It's not amazing, it's not meta, but I think it's way better than most people give it credit for. Next, we got Play With Your Food. I'm a big fan of Play With Your Food, but I'm not going to be dishonest with myself here. By itself, I would say it's just average. I think you really need to combine it with other perks for it to shine. But by itself, it's kind of just average. That movement speed can actually win you chases. Very often it can win you chases. But without certain perks, it can oftentimes feel a bit weird to get a stack for Play With Your Food. Predator is terrible. Don't run Predator. It actually robs you of information because since the scratch marks are spawning closer together, they actually can't spread on the side of objects often, so you can't see them from further away since they're oftentimes just going to be on the ground. So don't run Predator. Just get used to the default scratch mark spawning algorithm, if that's what you want to call it, and you'll be fine. Next, we have Remember Me. Remember Me is, I'm going to say... What do I want to say about Remember Me? I'm going to say Remember Me is average. It is a bit annoying that can be countered by the Obsession, but I do think the slowdown it gives to gates is quite valuable, especially since my honest opinion is that exit gates are way too fast. And they should be slowed down a little bit by default. The fact that you can slow down exit gates, especially as much as you can with Remember Me, does feel quite nice. For it to really be super effective, you kind of have to kill the Obsession, and it kind of does actually encourage you to tunnel the Obsession, which is a bit unfortunate by perk design, but it is a solid perk in my opinion. It does what it does, and it's decent at what it does. Next, you have Hex Ruin. Maybe another hot take. I'm going to say Hex Ruin is average. I think it's like on the lower end of average. I don't really want to put it in below average because I don't really... I'll put it in below average. It's going to be on like the higher end of below average. I still think that being able to automatically regress generators without even having to do anything is fairly valuable, even if it is only 100% speed. But the fact that you lose it after you kill someone, which is justifiable, I think you should lose it when you kill someone, but also the fact that it's only default regression is a very painful double nerf that they gave to it a while back. It would be nice to see if this perk was like 150% regression speed instead, or maybe even just 135. It could be pretty good, but as it stands currently, it's decent, but not like it's just teetering on being decent, which is not the best look. You could run it if you want, but also again, it's a hex perk. You could lose it within the first 10 seconds of the match, which kind of sucks. Next, you have Save the Best for Last. Save the Best for Last is very good. Save the Best for Last can sometimes annoy me because it often feels like I sometimes play around the perk and will specifically not chase the Obsession, but there's no denying that once you have it stacked up, especially now, it's especially good at handling chases and can be a really, really clutch perk towards the later stages of the match. Shadowborn is also going to go in special because I can't really rank it. The FOV increase can give you more information. Very, very situationally can give you more information, but honestly, a lot of people just run it because it's a quality of life thing. Some people run it because they actually get motion sick from the default FOV. Be quite nice if Behavior gave us an option for an FOV slider, or at the very least increase the base FOV for killers, as it's quite constrained and small. So I'm going to rank it in special because I can't really put it anywhere else due to the fact that people run it for accessibility reasons again and other flavor reasons. So it's going to sit down there. Next, we have Sloppy Butcher. Let me get a drink of water again. Delicious. Again, I'm trying to blast through these because I don't really want to be here for an hour. I don't want to keep you guys for an hour. We're reaching 25 minutes, which is pretty good. Pretty good time. How much perks? We still got quite a few perks left, but we'll get through them. I'm trying to save my breath, too. I'm doing this quite fast. Sloppy Butcher. I think Sloppy Butcher is quite decent. I'm going to put Sloppy Butcher. I'm going to put Sloppy Butcher in a high tier. I actually quite like it, especially with the hemorrhage change that we got a very long time ago, about a year ago at this point. The fact that it inflicts hemorrhage, which basically means that people have to fully commit to heals or they basically just lose the heal, is quite good. And just being able to consistently slow down heals, also very good. It's a lot of passive slowdown that you might not realize when you're playing your games, but you might realize it if you actually take the perk off. So I like Sloppy Butcher. Very easy to apply. Great perk. Run it if you want to slow down healing and help keep people injured. Spies from the Shadows. Kind of below average. Spies from the Shadows. I don't know what it is with this perk. Sometimes I feel like it just doesn't work for me. Like it doesn't work properly. And sometimes it just feels like it's super like all over the place. It's a very weird perk. I'm not a big fan of it. I know some people hail by it. I'm going to put it in below average just because it does have an effect that can be quite good sometimes, but I often find it's very inconsistent for me. Strider. I'm going to put... I'm going to put it in low tier. Strider doesn't really have much of an effect anymore. Strider used to be a perk that was almost exclusively ran on the Spirit, and it was almost exclusively run to counter Iron Will, back when Iron Will would actually fully silence a survivor. Then a while ago, they actually removed that. They made it so Iron Will trumped Strider, and now Iron Will doesn't even fully silence you, so Strider isn't really much necessary. This perk's kind of in need for a full rework. It does have a decent effect. You will be able to track survivors a lot easier if you run Strider, but you oftentimes don't really need it, especially if you're trying to track injured survivors. Surveillance. Surveillance is quite good. I like Surveillance. It's above average. Gives you a lot of information, pairs well with a lot of regression perks in the game. Just a nice perk. Quite like it. Territorial Imperative is low tier. It can be very gimmicky and fun on certain builds, but in reality, it's just a very niche perk that affects a very niche aspect of the game. Once again, though, can be fun on certain builds. Thanatophobia, I'm also, honest to God, going to rank it as low tier. I think Thanatophobia has been for a long time one of the most overrated perks on the killer side of things in Dead by Daylight. The slowdown it actually gives you, even pre-nerf, the slowdown it gave you was very, very minuscule when it applied to generators. Even when you had all the people injured, and more often than not, only a few killers could really get the full value out of this perk. And now the perk is basically useless if you don't have everyone injured, which makes it essentially only decent on Plague and Legion. So really, it's just not a great perk. I don't run it. I wouldn't run it. I think it's very overrated and has been for a really, really long time now. Next, we have Hex Third Seal. Third Seal is kind of weird because it's a perk that kind of unfairly punishes solo queue players because they don't have as much information as players that would be playing on a team. Third Seal can feel very poopy if you play it into like a 4-stack because obviously callouts can remove a lot of the effect of the perk, but having survivors blind can still be a fairly okay thing, especially permanently blind. I don't much value the blindness effect. I'm going to put it in low tier. I'm going to be a bit harsh on it. It's a hex perk, which means you can lose it. And like I said, I don't much value the blindness effect, even if it is permanent. If it's permanent, that is quite nice, but once again, you can lose it. And you could lose it 20 seconds in the match, which sucks. So, not the greatest perk in the game, basically. Thrill of the Hunt. I think Thrill of the Hunt is fucking good. Not like super good, but it is much better than people give it credit for. It's a really good totem defense perk, and it also slows down booning. I know booning isn't as popular anymore, but if people are going to boon, it is a perk that deals with that, and it's also a great perk at defending other perks like Devour Hope or any other hex perk that you want to keep alive. So it's pretty decent. I give it up for Thrill of the Hunt. It's quite nice. Next we have Tinkerer. Tinkerer, I think, is average. It's very good on certain killers, especially killers that have easy access to insta-downs, like Chainsaw Bros, Billy and Bubba. A bit shame that it can only activate once per generator, but it is understandable. I kind of wish the duration was a bit longer now, since it only activated once per generator. Once again, understandable. It's still a very decent perk, and I still actually do run it on certain builds and on certain occasions. It's also good information. Next we have Unnerving Presence. I think this is Unnerving Presence. Yeah, it is. Unnerving Presence. I'm going to put it in low tier. It's not amazing. Actually, I often find as a survivor that I hit greats more when a killer has Unnerving Presence, but there are certain situations where Unnerving Presence can shine in very, very specific, over-the-top skill check builds. Unrelenting is bottom tier, just too situational of effect. There's a thing you can do called Unrelenting Tech, which can be very, very, very funny if you actually pull it off, where you swing early for a pallet on purpose, and if a survivor is good, they won't drop the pallet because they recognize you swung early. And since you have Unrelenting, you'll actually recover fast enough that you'll just be able to hit them on the next time around. That can be really, really funny if you pull it off, but it is often a very, very situational thing that often doesn't really matter. It also doesn't work if you actually hit an object with your weapon, which kind of sucks. I think it should work if you hit an object. Just as a quality of life buff. I understand it's a perk more geared towards like newer players who are going to miss swings a lot, but even then, the effect isn't really all that great. Next, we have Whispers. I think Whispers is very decent. It's very decent. I'm going to put it in C tier, average. It gives you a lot of great generalist information, which can be very good, and there's a lot of things. It can basically do what a lot of the other aura reading perks do, but it isn't as direct about them. It's kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none. You know what I mean? It covers a lot of basis, but isn't super specific about it. Bamboozle is next. Bamboozle, I think, is... I'm going to put Bamboozle in high tier. I do like Bamboozle quite a lot. I just realized I don't have anything in top tier. We're going to get to that, though. Don't worry. We're going to get to that. Bamboozle is quite good. I like Bamboozle. There's a lot of really strong windows in the game. It can help you deal with those strong windows, and I very much like that out of a perk. Great chase perk, especially good on certain killers like Billy and Bubba. Just, honestly, solid perk. You know what? No, I'm gonna leave it in. I was thinking of moving it to top tier. I'm gonna leave it to high tier. You can get kind of fucked on certain maps, which sucks if you get a bad map for it, but it's still a really, really solid perk. And there are so many nasty windows in this game; it can help you deal with them, which I really like. Claustrophobia. I'm going to put it in average. Claustrophobia is very much overkill. No one's healing in your terror radius if you have claustrophobia, but if you pair it with a add-on that maybe inflicts hemorrhage, or you pair it with Sloppy Butcher, it could very, very much keep people injured very easily, as if they stop healing in your terror radius, obviously the heal is going to regress, which can have good synergy because they'll stop healing because it's super slow in your terror radius, and then they'll just lose the heal. So good at keeping people injured. Oftentimes it feels like it's very much overkill, though. Pop Goes the Weasel. I think Pop Goes the Weasel's decent. You know what? I think it's high tier. Pop, I still think is very good. It's a perk you oftentimes need to run with other regression perks for it to really feel all that good. But I do still find this perk very solid. Very solid. Just reliable regression that you can sometimes fall back on and can sometimes save you from losing a match. Not as good as it used to be. I do think it, obviously, it used to be very much top tier, but still reliable. I like it. I'm a big fan. I still run it from time to time on certain killers that I think, kind of need that controlled regression. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Next we have Hex Haunted Grounds. Hex Haunted Grounds, going to put in above average. I think it's quite good. It's kind of a trap totem perk. It can help you snowball a game in your favor, especially if you're a basic attack killer, as you can chain a lot of downs together when you get it. At the very least, it forces survivors to play very cautious for 60 seconds, which is very good. You kind of do have to pair it with another hex perk, though. Otherwise, people might just not cleanse the totem when they see it, as they might try to wait and see what the effect is, because they don't want to fuck with your haunted grounds. Rancor. Rancor is one of the funniest perks in the game. I'm going to put it in below average because the overall effect of it is just kind of whatever. The information is okay. The ability to kill a survivor at the end of the game, specifically the obsession, is really, really funny. It's absolutely hilarious. It can be really funny in certain builds where you can switch the obsession around. In the end game, you can get a lot of different results. Definitely a big fan of the perk. Definitely not the best perk in the game, though. The information, I think, is kind of slept on, though. I do think the information is quite nice, but it isn't nearly as good as something like Bitter Murmur or, some of the other R rating perks in the game, Barbecue, etc., etc. But it can come in clutch sometimes. Spirit's Fury. Spirit's Fury is above average, but it very much needs to be paired with another perk, such as Enduring. But if you do pair it with Enduring, it is very, very good. And can basically auto-win you chases sometimes. Discordance. Discordance is high tier without a doubt. Great information, good at keeping tabs on generators, gives you value even when it's not active, as it's basically telling you the pacing of the game. It's telling you that no one is grouping on generators, which is worse for you because they're splitting up on generators. So just great perk, awesome information, big fan of it. Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden I'm going to put in below average, but it kind of depends on what killer you're playing. On certain killers, it can be very, very nice to have. On Huntress and Trickster, which are killers that both reload at lockers, can feel very nice. But on other killers, it's kind of just a wasted perk slot. You're very rarely actually downing someone during the expose timer when they get out of a locker. And if someone knows that you have this perk, people are just going to not get in lockers. So it's going to be easy enough to counter. Mad Grit. Mad Grit, I am going to put in average. I do think Mad Grit is kind of decent. Hell, I actually think it's better than Iron Grasp for, like, carrying a survivor further distances. And it can be extremely funny if you pair it with Agitation or, God forbid, Agitation Iron Grasp for that whole backpack build. Super funny stuff. Can oftentimes get you a lot of... can get you Snowball at times when you least expect it. Very decent perk. Corrupt Intervention. Corrupt Intervention I'm going to put in average. It's not as good as it used to be. Decent early game slowdown, especially on certain killers. Once you down a survivor, it just goes away. It can help make your early game a little bit more consistent, but sometimes killers already have a strong enough early game and they don't really need the assistance. Dark Devotion. I think Dark Devotion's a little slept on. I'm going to put it at above average. It's a very hectic perk. A lot of people don't actually realize what's going on until like halfway through the perk's duration. And the stealth you get out of it can be very, very unsuspecting. It also, the terror radius you give the obsession when you actually hit someone with the perk carries terror radius effects. So it'll do things like Infectious Fright and, overwhelming presence and unnerving presence, all that fun stuff. So it can be a very, very interesting perk to run. I do think it's a little bit slept on just because people don't often expect it. Infectious Fright. I think Infectious Fright is high tier. I don't know why people have stopped running this perk. It is still really, really good, especially since, once again, I think slugging is super strong right now in the current meta, and I don't think people are realizing that. Infectious Fright can help you snowball a game very much in your favor. Recognizing when survivors are grouped up in a situation where you might be able to chain multiple downs together is super important and super game defining, especially on certain killers. Furtive Chase is awful. It's not good. The best effect it has is the obsession switching effect, which two other perks can cover that effect. So it's further and further just not a useful perk. I'm All Ears is above average. It's quite good. It can help you win chases sometimes. It does feel very shitty, though, that sometimes this perk can get activated by someone across the map. I think the perk should be limited to only activating if you're in chase with someone, or at the very least they should lower the cooldown by a little bit so someone can't just spring your I'm All Ears and basically make it useless in your next chase or whatever. But yeah. Next we have Thrilling Tremors. This is the perk that I honestly think is better than Barbecue. I'm going to put it in high tier. Thrilling Tremors, great information. Kind of has passive slowdown. Prevents survivors from getting on generators sometimes. And it's good on killers that are low mobility. It annoyingly has the design that used to come with the time period when Ghostface came out, where behavior was putting like fucking huge cooldowns on everything. So it does have kind of a bit of a cooldown. Nothing too major. I still do think that the perk is very good even with the cooldown. Hell, I think it's more consistent than barbecue, and I always have. I just kind of ran barbecue back in the day because of the blood points. Because like I said, this is still good on like lower mobility killers. Yeah. Next we have whatever this is called now. I'm just going to call it what it used to be called, Cruel Limits, or a claustrophobia, I think is what it's called now. This perk is, God, it's not good. Just too many aspects of it to set up. You basically have to be arriving at a generator when it gets completed, for you to get actual value out of it, or you have to be chasing someone in an area where a generator gets completed, and it doesn't even block pallets. Survivors can just go to pallets if they really want to. Not a great perk. If it blocked pallets, I think it'd be a lot better, but currently it's not a very good perk. Fearmonger I think is a top tier perk. Fearmonger is fucking amazing, dude. It is consistent exhaustion, and it also has blind on top of it. Which again, I said I don't really think much of the blind effect, but it is kind of just a free addition on top of the exhaustion that you get. Even if it just was exhaustion, I would still think this perk is very good, but currently I think this perk is super consistent, especially with the fact that a lot more people are running things like Sprint Burst and Life. It's great. It's a great perk. Run it. It's going to help you a lot in Chase. Jolt, here we go. 2-for-1 deal. Jolt, also top tier. I think Jolt is amazing. Consistent regression. Great slowdown. I hate to say this, but it helps you set up 3 gens, and it helps you lock down 3 gens. I hate to say that, but it does do that, and 3 gens are certainly strong on certain killers currently. But it really just a very consistent perk. It's only held back by the fact that it doesn't activate on special attacks, and also doesn't activate on grabs, and survivors know that. They can kind of play around it. But otherwise, it's super amazing literally 99% of the time, and it has absolutely saved matches. It has won me so many matches over the time that I've played Dead by Daylight. I've ran this perk for many hours now, many games. It has saved me and won me an insane amount of games, so definitely worth your time as a regression perk. Blood Echo, I think, is above average. It can be a little awkward to set up, but on certain killers, once again, Plague Legion, killers that can keep survivors injured fairly consistently, it can be quite good. And as long as you have like 2 people injured, I think it's pretty decent. Hemorrhage and Exhausted, it's good stuff. You know, I ain't gonna argue with that. It's good stuff. Nemesis, I think, is average. It's wonderful if you play with your food, and it's also wonderful if you pair it with some of the other perks in the game. I think something that people don't realize about Nemesis is when it actually activates, it reveals the aura of the survivor who activated it. So it reveals their aura for 4 seconds and also makes them oblivious, which can be quite nice. The oblivious can help you out. You can switch the obsession. You know, you can injure someone, get stunned by them, then come back later for them. It's 60 seconds. You can definitely leave and then come back for them. Zanshin Tactics is not good. Okay, actually, you know what? No, I'm gonna say it's not good. I don't care what fucking, like, I don't know. There's like some. I've heard that, like, I don't know, like clown players or like Pyramid Head players, they're like, oh yeah, Zanshin Tactics is pretty good. It's not good. You can just know where they are. You can know where the windows and the pallets are, man. It's not nearly as valuable as like Windows of Opportunity, which is the same thing for survivors basically. Windows of Opportunity is fucking amazing. Zanshin Tactics, no, it's not that good. It's not that good. Don't run it. If you're a new player, maybe run it. Don't run it if you just know where shit is, you know. Dead Man's Switch, I think, is above average. I absolutely hate Dead Man's Switch. It's one of my least favorite perks in the entire game to play against this survivor. It boils my blood so hard, but I gotta try to be objective here, and gotta admit that it's good, but it's not like OP or anything. It's good slowdown. It can help out, but it's definitely not as oppressive as it used to be. Gearhead's going in S tier. Gearhead's amazing now after the buff. I think Gearhead is actually quite meta, and it's probably one of the best information perks in the entire game, especially if you combine it with Lethal Pursuer. It is constant tabs on people with Lethal Pursuer. It is 10 seconds of aura reading. which can give you a lot of information. 10 seconds is quite a long time to be seeing a survivor. And people are always hitting good skill checks. Don't listen to like what people say, like, well, if they're good survivors, they're always hitting greats. Even me, you know, I'm pretty good at survivor. I'm not hitting all greats. I'm hitting a good every now and then, okay? You're definitely getting value out of this perk during your matches. Trust me on that one. Great perk. Amazing. I think the buff really, really did it justice. Retribution. Retribution, I'm going to say above average. It's very good in builds that are more oriented around hexes, and the more hexes you have, the better it can be. Or you can pair it with something like Plaything, which is constantly generating hexes for you, and it can be a lot of great information, but not really that good by itself. It kind of requires other perks to really, really shine, but when you do have those builds, it does shine quite nicely, but it can kind of suck if it is the first hex perk that gets cleansed. Part of me almost wishes this wasn't a hex, and it actually was just, like, it was just what it did. And it didn't occupy a hex totem slot and didn't like associate itself with a hex totem, but it is what it is. That's what it be, and that's what it do. Deathbound. I'll put Deathbound in below average. I do like Deathbound. I think it's kind of a neat concept, but it's just not. It's not all there. A lot of activation requirements. Oftentimes it can just be whatever. Can be quite nice. I kind of wish that it activated a bit closer, like you didn't have to be so far away from the survivor to actually activate it. There's a number of things. I think if they did some numbers tweaks on Deathbound, it'd actually be quite good, but as it stands, it's not all there. Forced Penance. Another drink of water. Delicious. Forced Penance. Also kind of below average. Decent effect, maybe, but it's okay. It's okay. It can help you keep people injured, but it feels like it takes a lot for this perk to actually do anything for you. But being broken for that long can definitely be valuable in some ways, and certain killers can apply it easier than others. You can actually apply it quite easily as Legion due to the fact that you're like always hitting people like around each other and whatnot. But it oftentimes requires a lot of input from you as the killer to get it to work, and even when it does work, the effect is kind of very average. Trail of Torment. I think Trail of Torment's really good, actually. At the very least, it's above average. I'm hesitant to put it in average. It's a perk that's, or not average. I'm hesitant to put it in high tier. It is quite good, and it can do a lot for you, especially on certain killers. It can kind of suck if the survivors are on top of it and they deactivate it super quickly, but if you get value out of this perk, it can be very, very nice. That's what I'll say about it. Blood Favor. Blood Favor is honestly really good if the Hex actually stays up. If the Hex gets cleansed, it kind of sucks, but if it does stay up, Blood Favor can put in a lot of work for you, especially on certain killers like Huntress, Trickster, any killer really, but a lot of killers that deal damage with their special attacks can get quite a lot of value out of this perk. Other killers too, like Doctor and Clown, who struggle to deal with pallets, again, can also really, really benefit from this perk. Next we have Dragon's Grip. Dragon's Grip, man, Dragon's Grip. Oh, it's such a cool concept, but damn, is there just... The cooldown on Dragon's Grip is just too long. It's just too long. Let's just leave it at that. It's too long. If they made the cooldown shorter, it could be a lot better of a perk. Currently, it's just too long. Hex Undying is above average. It is very good. It is the most consistent way to defend a totem in the game currently. And like I said, if you pair it with something like Devour Hope, it can be quite nasty. Coup de Grace. I think Coup de Grace is honestly above average. I'm going to make a little bit of a hot take here. I think Coup de Grace is kind of nice. It can very consistently get you hits around certain pallets, and certain killers can actually save the stacks as if they were like save the best for last stacks. Some killers can actually save the stacks of Coup quite easily and get quite a bit of use out of the perk. It does kind of suck that it only activates 5 times per game, but sometimes that's all you need it to do. Hoarder, whatever, Hoarder. It's just a very specific perk that activates on a very specific aspect of the game that really doesn't matter that much to you, to be honest. shit, what is this? Oppression. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oppression. I'm going to put it in below average. Again, similar to Dragon's Grip, has a decent effect, just plagued by its cooldown, though. If they lowered the cooldown, this perk could actually be quite good and could be quite refreshing to play against. But because I actually do get excited when I see this perk. It's quite fun to play against a survivor, but just too long of a cooldown. It just takes too long. They need to lower that. Crowd control. Crowd control is above average. I don't think it's as good as something like Bamboozle. And another vaulting perk, which we'll get into a little bit later. But crowd control is decent. Problem is it's a hex, so it can get cleansed and you can get rid of it. But regardless, it does help deal with some pretty nasty windows in the game. And once again, windows are super nasty in the game right now. There's a lot of super nasty windows on certain maps. It can really come in clutch on maps like, I don't know, like Lambkin Lane or some shit where you're just going to roll your eyes at how many good windows there are. No Way Out. I'm going to put No Way Out in top tier because that endgame slowdown can really save your ass sometimes. And it is super consistent. It feels like it rewards you for playing the game well, but maybe you just had like one gaff here or there that might have, put you in a bad situation. So the survivors got to the end game. Maybe they have like 3 people up and you think you can close the game out. But you need something. No Way Out is that perk that you need. Like if you've played the game well, you've got your 4 stacks, you've got 3 people alive, you can absolutely turn a game around with No Way Out in the end game in that kind of situation, which I do quite like about the perk. Again, also encourages you not to tunnel. Love that design. I wish every perk was designed like this, but we all can't be winners. Starstruck. I think Starstruck is A tier. Starstruck is very good. Even if it's not combined with agitation, it's very good. Lots of great pressure. Can help you snowball. Awesome perk. Eruption. Eruption. I think Eruption is actually pretty good. I think it's high tier still. I definitely, if this was pre-nerf, I would say it's absolutely broken. But I still think it's very solid. Good regression. Aura reading's awesome. I think the purpose of the perk has just changed. It's much more of an aggressive perk now. And I actually do enjoy running it sometimes. So I think it's still worth your time. Awesome stuff. Hysteria. Hysteria is average. Hysteria is okay, but it can also sometimes feel like it takes a lot to set it up. And takes a lot to actually really get some value. Certain killers can really get value out of it. Once again, Plague and Legion, who can keep survivors injured, and a lot of survivors injured very easily. But it can sometimes take a while to actually set it up. And it actually procs the first time you hit a survivor, which is super obnoxious, dude. I actually wish it didn't do that. If it didn't do that, I would literally rank the perk higher. But the first time you hit a survivor, it procs and it goes on goddamn cooldown, and that bothers me so much, dude, because all you're getting is one person. The person you're already chasing, they're just going to be oblivious. Who cares, man? Who cares? Like, the Oblivious isn't that long either. The Oblivious could maybe be a little bit longer, but definitely some number changes could make this perk a lot better. Lethal Pursuer. Put this in top tier. Lethal Pursuer is great. Good way to start the game. Can start the game aggressive. Affects other aura reading perks. Gearhead. Just an awesome perk. I love Lethal Pursuer. It's one of my favorite perks in the game. I run it every game, dog. Deadlock. Again, another one. Boom. Deadlock. S tier. Consistent slowdown. You don't got to do shit for it. It works for you. It stays in the background. You don't got to do anything. It's going to slow the game down for you. I love Deadlock. It's awesome. 0 input slowdown. I'm a big fan of that. I can play the game aggressively and just buy myself a little bit of time. I'm a big fan of that. Scourge. Hooks of Pain. I think it's called Hooks of Pain. I think it's above average. It's quite good. After the numbers changed, I'm glad more people actually don't run this perk. I'd be very annoyed if more people ran this perk. But it provides you some good slowdown. Encourages people not to heal. If they do heal, they do shit slower. Good enough for me, man. It requires a Scourge Hook, which can be a little annoying sometimes. But hey, I think it's a good enough effect, and I think the numbers are good enough on it that doesn't really need to be changed. Plaything. Plaything is high tier. Very consistent. Awesome stuff. Forces slow down on the survivors. They have to go and look for their totem, or they have to deal with being permanently oblivious, and that can be really nasty on some killers. Billy, Bubba, Legion to an extent, Plague, I don't know, killers that can easily down you very quickly. You know, shit like that. It can be nasty stuff. You know, Plaything can be nasty, and it's got slowdown built into it. Big fan of that. Grim Embrace. I would love to rank Grim Embrace higher, but I am just going to put it in average. I'm a big fan of Grim Embrace. Once again, it's got that design that I like. Rewards you for not tunneling, but the reward just isn't good enough. The reward ain't good enough. That being said, with all the generators blocked, you can actually do things as killer that you normally wouldn't. You can kind of spend time setting up the map in favor of you. But sometimes it can feel like it can be a little hard to get Grim Embrace when you want Grim Embrace, because you have to look for a specific survivor and actually down them and hook them. There's some ways they could make this perk pretty good, and I don't think it would be like over the top OP if they did make it good, unless it was like some super long amount of time they block the generators for. But I would like to see Grim Embrace get buffed. You know, it would encourage people not to tunnel, which I do like. I like that design. Big fan of that. Scourge Hook Pain Res. I still think Scourge Hook Pain Res, man, is good as fuck. It basically makes it so survivors have to do another entire generator sometimes. Caveat to that, survivors can play around it a little bit. They can kind of make it so your pain res kind of sucks, and will like hit like a 10% generator or something, which can feel quite awful. But if you play around your pain res and maybe save it for specific moments of the match, it can actually come in quite clutch. I think if you save it for later stages of the match when there's only 2 or 1 gen left, it can actually be quite really good. So there's a higher chance that you'll actually hit a generator that's fairly progressed at that point. Pentimento is fucking good, and I don't know why more people don't use it. Maybe because it requires a bit of input on the killer's part, but even 1 stack of Pentimento can inflict a lot of slowdown on generators and force people to cleanse totems and do all that nonsense. Call of Brine's just kind of average. It's not nearly as good as it used to be. I still think it is good information, actually. I think it's more of an information perk now, but there are better perks for that kind of information. It's kind of like a 2-for-1 package, but it's not amazing at what it does for either thing, but it's okay. It's okay at doing a little bit of regression. It's okay at doing a little information. It's a little 2-for-1 package in 1 perk, but it ain't the best anymore. But maybe that's okay. That's an okay thing. I'd like to see the information part of this perk actually get buffed, and I might run it a lot more if the info part got buffed, but maybe don't buff the regression part a whole lot. You could buff it up a little bit, but you know, we don't want to do anything too scary to it. Floods of Rage. Floods of Rage is good information. Requires Scourge Hooks, which can be annoying, but it is a decent effect, especially if you run it with Lethal Pursuer. Just solid info. Some killers can make use of that info quite a bit. Merciless Storm, average. Very fun perk to play around as survivors. And sometimes it can come in clutch as killer, but I actually kind of wish it regressed generators a little bit more if they fucked up the skill check. But who knows? I don't know how you'd buff this thing if you even want to buff it. It's a fun perk, though. I will give it that. Next, we have Darkness Revealed. Gonna take another sip of water. Pushing to the end here. We're making decent time. I'm just under an hour, which is quite good. I think we're getting through these kind of quick. I could have a bad habit of rambling sometimes. Darkness Revealed. Sometimes Darkness Revealed, man, fucking bugs me, dude. It bugs the shit out of me. I'm going to put it in average because it does bug the shit out of me. Some maps it just feels terrible on. Sometimes you just don't have the time to actually activate the perk. But sometimes it can be quite good, and it can give you a lot of info. So it's kind of inconsistent. Some people really swear by it. It can be decent on reload killers like Trickster and Huntress, but otherwise, it's just okay. Disillusion. Dude, Disillusion's fucking hilarious, and I love it. Actually, I'm going to put it in high tier, dude. Oh, no. Where do I want to put this? I think Disillusion's funny, dude. You can win a lot of chases with Disillusion. And that's it. You can just completely screw people on pallets with this perk. I like it. I'm a big fan of Disillusion. You know what? I'm just going to leave it in high tier. I think more people should run this perk. Or actually, maybe more people shouldn't run this perk. It feels like it's probably a little annoying to play around as Survivor. But you can really force a lot of stupid stuff if you know how to play around it as Killer. Septic Touch. Septic Touch is... it's okay. I don't think it's nearly as good as like Fearmonger, but it can essentially have the same effect for healing. If you have a big terror radius, this could be quite useful. But otherwise, it's just okay. Exhausted and Blindness, decent stuff. The Exhausted particularly is quite decent, and it's actually for a longer period than Fearmonger. It is a 15 seconds, I believe, which can be hard to get rid of unless you're actually just doing a generator. Shattered Hope. Shattered Hope is... I would say it's not as good as it used to be with the Circle of Healing nerf. I would say it's just average. The information can be good, and certain times it can be nice to completely get rid of a totem spot, especially if they've got a nasty totem spot like the top of Ironworks of Misery, and they keep using it for a boon of certain sorts. So that can feel very nice, but with the Circle of Healing nerf, it doesn't feel like it's as imperative to snuff boons sometimes. Awakened Awareness, a Wawa, if you will. Put it in above average. Good information. Very solid information. You can see a lot of survivors when they least expect it. Superior Anatomy. Superior fucking Anatomy, dude. I'm gonna hit you with some real big facts here. This shit's fucking top tier, dude. If you're thinking to yourself right now, you're thinking, why did this dude rank this top tier? This guy's out of his mind. Go run a single fucking game with this perk, dude. Run a single game with this perk and tell me I'm wrong. Superior Anatomy is amazing. I want to make a video about this at some point because more people need to know about this perk. More people need to know about this perk. It is 40% increased vault speed if someone vaults near you. That's not a cooldown. That's not like a thing. When someone vaults near you, your next vault that you do, 40% faster. You can end chases with it. You can deal with good windows with it. I think it's better than Bamboozle a lot of the time. This perk is fucking amazing. I'm going off about this perk because I genuinely think this is so much better than people give it credit for. So many people just glaze over this perk like it's nothing. I see people running Bamboozle. Bamboozle's still good. It's very good for certain killers. I'm telling you, run a single game with Superior Anatomy and tell me I'm fucking wrong, dude. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm telling you, run the goddamn perk. I swear to God, I will pick you up. I will pick you up, and I'll give you a kiss if you run this perk. Please do. It's amazing. You're missing out on it. I'm telling you right now. If you are frustrated by windows like I am, you get to Lambkin Lane and your eyes fucking roll into the back of your skull because you're like, oh, here we fucking go again. You're going to be glad that you look down at your perk bar, you look down at your little loadout, and you see this perk. It's going to be your saving grace. I'm telling you, dude, it's going to be your saving grace. Terminus. Terminus, I'm going to put it in above average just because it counters Adrenaline. And Adrenaline's one of the best perks in the entire game currently. So it's got that going for it. It's kind of like fits the same bill as Noed, except they can't get rid of it until they open a gate. Could be pretty good. I just like the fact that it counters Adrenaline. Nowhere to Hide. Nowhere to Hide, I'm going to say, is above average. Good information. There's definitely still reasons to kick generators, even after Call of Brian Overcharge got nerfed. Yeah, man. It's cool stuff. Hubris. Hubris. I think it's average. It's a bit too gimmicky. It requires a lot for it to work. Certain killers can actually make quite good use of it, though. Deathslinger, for example. But otherwise, it can oftentimes feel it's just a bit too gimmicky to get a lot of value out of it. So it's just going to stay an average. Holy shit, I just realized this is not Nowhere to Hide. I'm so sorry. This is Nowhere to Hide. This is Hex Face the Darkness. That's it. Hex Face the Darkness. My bad. So sorry. I'm just Face the Darkness is below average. Can be very good on stealth killers actually. I'll give it that credit. Actually, average. I'll put it in average just because it is very good on stealth killers. And can give you quite a bit of information. But I honestly think the cooldown between the screams needs to be a little bit shorter. It feels like it takes forever for people to actually scream with this perk. Why am I forgetting this perk? I actually really like this perk. Game of Foot. Game of Foot is great, dude. I love Game of Foot. I'm gonna put it in above average just because it feels like it can be a bit tough to set up sometimes, but when it pays off, it pays off. It's wonderful and really good. Love pairing it with like brutal strength. Awesome chase perk. I like it. Great addition to the game. Switches obsessions around. I think my only gripe with it is I kind of wish you knew if the person you were hitting actually switched to your obsession when you hit them. Otherwise, it's a cool perk. Leverage. Leverage just... I think leverage is below average. Takes too long to build up. And by the time it's maximum stacks, it doesn't really matter. So I think if it built a little bit faster, it'd be quite a bit better. And thwack. I like thwack. Thwack's good. I'm a big fan. Kind of sucks that you can waste value out of thwack for playing the game well. Like if you are chaining hooks together. Like, scenario. You hook someone, you get thwack. You don't end up using thwack, but you down someone and you hook them. You basically just lost a use of thwack, which feels a little weird. I think you should be able to stack up a couple of uses of it. But otherwise, I think it's a pretty solid info perk. Here's the tier list. Look at this. Admire it. I'm going to scroll through one time. Maybe I'll give it a little bit of this here. I'll do you a favor. Here, check this one out. Boom! I'll do you a little favor in case you want to pause it. Just take a look. I'll even link to it. Hope you liked it. Sorry it was kind of a little over an hour. Kind of wanted to be under an hour, but honestly, I'm proud of myself. If I had just gone on about things, it might have taken like 2 to 3 hours, dude. Hope you enjoyed it. More build videos coming this week. Stick around for them. Like, favorite, subscribe. Stay amazing. Stay winning. I'll see you next time.